Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Here to talk all things hockey are your hosts, Brad Crisco, Ryan Hanna, and Evan Lobsinger.
Bad day to be Evan.
Is that a question or a statement?
No, it's a statement. I could ask you as well. Is it a bad day to be you?
Yeah. I haven't been able to breathe out of my nose for about... Oh, we're going on close to 9 hours now.
Well, the good news is you've always been a mouth breather, so nothing.
Yeah, it made it quite difficult when I was out practicing today, standing over the golf ball, when it just feels like slime is going to fall out of your face.
Wow, gross.
Hey, it's just resistance training, so next time I'm feeling better, I'll be amazing out there.
So Evan told us he had bad allergies, and our reaction was first to say, well, be heavy on the mute button today and not feel better, pal. And not only that, Evan, we received enough complaints from people who watch the show on YouTube about how big your screen is because you do the recording, that we've actually had to find a workaround to minimize your mug because it was bothering people because, well, I mean, some episodes you're inspired, but a lot of episodes you're just Evan, and that's not, it's not too chatty. So
I don't feel bad for anyone.
You've seen a reduction in size and a reduction in breathing. So for once, Brad, I think we come out ahead in terms of health and wellness on this podcast.
For now, I have real deep concerns about what my next couple days are going to look like, though.
Are you going into war?
No. So Crystal went up to visit her dad with the kids over the last 24 hours.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. So everything was fine for the first few hours they were there. And then I guess her dad got a call. He's got shingles, which isn't contagious directly.
Yeah, but it's shingles.
But it can give kids chickenpox.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's not good.
So it's not like, it's not as contagious as chickenpox, but shit.
Do parents still do like chickenpox parties? Is that still a thing, or is that like way old?
I have not heard of one. And in a perfect world, we're not going to experience it now because I'd like Hanky to be a little older before I go through this little corner of hell. But I mean, ugh.
Well, I'm fine. I had a good day. Today I was like, oh man, it's only Wednesday. And then I realized it was Thursday. And I was like, sweet. This is
Guess
great.
who has the day off tomorrow?
Nice.
Me.
Bullshit. Screw both of you. Although I also just remembered it's a long weekend. All right. Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast with two working nostrils. I'm Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
With 0 working nostrils, I'm Evan.
And for those on YouTube, this black corner of the screen, I don't know where it is. I can't tell where it is in the recording until I get Evan's screen capture. That is, its function is purely as an Evan reduction system. So you're welcome for that. And for all the Evan stands, I don't apologize.
Yeah, no, my screen's for the Evan stands.
Evan expansion squad. I really like that I don't read the display names until partway through the episode. It's never intentional.
Yeah, see, you want to reduce Evan. I want the screen to be just Evan with our voices just overlaid.
Just chaotic evil, just Evan's dumb face like clicking around.
You can just hear us in the background like we're in the next room.
Yeah. I'm sure that's how some people watch the show. Anyhow, on this episode of the podcast, of course, we're going to talk about the actual hockey games that have been happening. As we speak, the Flyers and the Islanders are tied 4-4 in Game 6 with about 4 minutes to go in the third. We are also going to be talking about the other series, hirings that have gone on in the NHL that are a touch disappointing because they are not as hilarious as we wanted them to be. And then another notable trade, which is kind of surprising. We'll be talking about Red Wings contract rumors and such, and then we have an exciting interview that Brad and I recorded today with Jokke Nevalainen of Dobber Prospects. So that was a great chat we had with him, and we will be putting that on for you guys just before we do our prospect profile on Jake Sanderson this episode. So I'm glad. Yeah, go ahead.
Today, though, we got to start by a moment of silence in honor of what would have been a truly contentious night between the two of us had COVID not ruined the world. Because had it not been for COVID, there would have been a big preseason tilt in the NFL tonight.
Buffalo, Detroit.
It would have been the Bills versus the Lions tonight.
You know my take on the Lions, which is that I come in with no hope. And that's purely so that when things fall apart, which they do, or they start out apart, I'm not hurt, because there's only so much sports pain I can take. Matt Stafford texted something about shooting for league MVP. Someone called him a dark horse. He said, forget dark horse, I'm going to get league MVP. And I was like,
Bless your heart.
Now I got to drink the Kool-Aid. I love Matt Stafford. I'm so sad as a Detroit sports fan right now. But I'll have hope for a couple weeks. I'll give myself a couple weeks, because we don't get hockey until January, so I can replace hockey pain with football pain.
Who do the Lions open against?
I don't know. The Bears, I think.
Oh, well, there you go. You're going to be 1-0. Congrats.
Yeah, or we lose to Mitch Trubisky. You think about that? You know how embarrassing that is?
Who loses to Mitch Trubisky?
Yeah.
There's defenses in the NFL where there's a reality where somehow the Bears put up negative points with Mitch Trubisky at QB.
You don't have to tell me, man. I spend a third of my time talking shit about Mitch Trubisky. And I know Bears fans, terrible people, like just god-awful people. Hate them.
And most of them are also Blackhawks fans. Weird how that works, right?
Yeah, also strange. And they like weird foods as well. They're big cilantro people. Don't trust them. But it would be the most Lions thing to do, to like beat New England one week, like not this year's New England, but then lose to the Bears the next. Like that's Lions right there. The Bills is like win a couple like huge games, lose a tough one to a division rival, then it's win and end, but then Josh Allen goes down. Like that's Bills luck. Like it's just bad luck. Lions, like nobody beats the Lions like the Detroit Lions. They're experts at punching themselves in the face.
Peak Bills. So last season of them clinching a playoff spot with like 3 weeks left. It will never happen again in the history of humanity. Peak Bills is go out week one against like a heavily favored Patriots, where like the Bills are like 14-point underdogs. Play them so tough, unreal game, and then they lose on like a last-second field goal. But because the Bills are terrible, you get the moral victory. It's like, hey, we almost beat Brady. And then go out and get absolutely shit kicked by the worst team in the league the next game. That's peak Bills. So good moral victory, still a loss, then an actual loss that ruins all the moral victory, whatever residuals you had.
Brad, the only time any of us have been in a good sports place since we started this podcast has been when your stupid Toronto Blue Jays made that playoff run.
I don't know, man. The Bills played a playoff game last year. That felt weird and amazing.
That was great. Everyone loved it, but it was never going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Is this going to be a different show when the Red Wings are good?
So let me just reiterate, of the three major sports teams I cheer for right now, by far the most likely for success right now is the Bills. If that is not the most depressing state of sports I have ever experienced in my life, I don't know what is.
Oh, what am I talking about? Liverpool just won the league title. Forget it. Screw you, peasants. Anyhow, let's get to talking about hockey. I am happy that, New York Islanders are on a power play. I'm happy that certain series haven't ended 3-1, because I think that's boring, especially for a very cool second round. So Vegas is up 3-2 on Vancouver. Colorado has come back and tied it against Dallas. They beat the hell out of Dallas that one game. Tampa Bay beat Boston, which we'll get to in a second. And then the Islanders are up 3-2 against Philly pending the end of this game. So let's talk about Tampa Bay taking it over Dallas first.
What?
Or sorry, Boston.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Time's a charm. Ryan, this is the playoffs. You can't even mix Buffalo up with these.
Yeah, that was stupid of me. A little bit of a quicker series win for Tampa Bay over Boston than I anticipated, although I did see them winning. Is this Tampa's year to finally shake the curse?
I think I've predicted Tampa to win the cup before the playoffs every year this podcast has existed, or pretty damn close to it. So you can ask me this question every year, and I will say yes until they do. They are the kings of finding new and creative ways to not win in the playoffs. This is their 4th conference finals in the last 6 years, so this isn't exactly new territory for them. Out of those 4 conference finals, they made the finals once, and that was the finals. I think Tyler Johnson broke his wrist, Stamkos was probably hurt, and Ben Bishop blew out his groin. So, I mean, I don't know what to make of them. I truly feel whoever wins between the Islanders and the Flyers, Tampa is going to be heavy favorites. Heavy. I don't care how good the Islanders' defensive system is, and even though I'm starting to come around on the Islanders a little bit, they are the kings of the comeback, and I respect that. I don't think, I'm not going to say they don't stand a chance, but I think Tampa will be a very clearly defined favorite no matter who they play.
I think so too. I think we're going to, and of course anything can happen in the conference finals. So depending on who comes through, Philly or the Islanders, let's say Tampa does go through. I really think the only way they're not the absolute favorite going in is if it's Colorado or Vegas out of the West, which, perfectly likely. Those are both very strong teams. I would count Tampa Bay the favorite no matter what, but I would say Vegas would make it very, very close.
I think for Tampa to not be considered the favorite if they go to the finals is whoever comes out of the West comes out of the conference finals and just an absolute heater. Like Vegas rattles off 3 in a row or 4 in a row and wins a series in 4 or 5 games. And obviously that could go for any of the teams in the West. But beyond that, it's hard to bet against Tampa. And we don't even know the status of Steven Stamkos. They just walked through the President's Trophy winners without their captain and arguably, I don't think he's arguably one of their best players anymore, but a top 3 player on that team. Actually, maybe not a top 3 player on that team. Top 5 player on that team. Holy shit, Tampa is stacked.
I know. That team, like I said before, the team that Steve Yzerman built, like that team is so, it's bizarre how long they've been contending and how strong of a position they've been contending in. Like there have been a couple hiccups here and there, as happens with any team in the modern NHL, but truly with the amount of like sustained success, and they'll continue to have it as well. Like that team isn't going to be bad all of a sudden. Like they still have some runway ahead of them if it doesn't work out for them this year. Good for them. It's well deserved, and it's not really a surprise. So I don't know. I kind of want to see them. I want to see them in the finals, whether or not people are big fans of Tampa.
Well, if there's any team that could potentially beat them, it'd be the Islanders.
Yeah, for real.
Just they Columbus Blue Jacket them in the conference finals.
I didn't really think the Islanders would be that much trouble for Philly because I really liked how they looked coming out of the round robin games. But the Islanders have been fantastic, and they make it look like Philadelphia doesn't even care to be there. It's incredible what Barry Trotz has that team doing right now. Matt Martin has 4 goals.
What?
He has 4 goals this playoffs.
Well, hold on. We know what happened there. It's the curse of the former Leaf. If they're on the Leafs and they are no longer on the Leafs, they are immediately 10 times better. Hey, remember when Leaf fans hated Jonathan Bernier so much that they just begged to get rid of him? And now Red Wings fans are like, my God, he's the best goalie we've had in 5 years. Yeah, it happens to everybody. And the Islanders really galaxy brain this. So like, we like Matt Martin. We want to keep Matt Martin. We're going to let him go to Toronto for a couple of years just so we can get him back and he can get that power boost.
Matt Martin has 1 less goal than Matt Barzal. He has 1 more goal than Jordan Eberle, and more than Josh Bailey.
There we go. Oh, man.
Toronto Sports, the city that keeps on giving.
The amount of drafts I have on Twitter, just like discussing potential moves where Toronto picks up Bernier as their backup goalie and like not even trying to be funny. I don't do it because I don't really care for the replies, and I don't care for it to reach Toronto Twitter because Toronto Twitter has a way of ruining your day. But I truly mean it unironically when I say Jonathan Bernier would be great for a team looking for a backup, which
Jonathan Bernier would be great for a couple teams looking for starters. Legit question, would you consider that Jonathan Bernier was better than Frederik Andersen this year, knowing that Toronto is now open to moving on from Andersen?
Yeah. Yeah, he was. He flat out played better.
So then he is an upgrade at starter for the Leafs right now, which, I love it. It sustains me.
Before we talk about backup goalies, because there's a big storyline on that, the other series, any notable storylines? It's fun seeing Colorado remembering that they can play good hockey and beat the Dallas Stars, and that game's now going to Game 7, or that series.
It's not even that I can say Colorado remember how to play better hockey. Nathan McKinnon's just going Super Saiyan. He just has the most points through 14 games of the playoffs since Wayne Gretzky. Like, he's on another planet from everybody else right now. Cale Makar is putting up cartoonish numbers, and yet everybody's like, yeah, but he can't play defense. Cool. He's like a plus 13 right now. Like, Colorado's being propped up by 5 players, but those 5 players might be the best players in the world at their position that are still playing right now, honestly. It's scary how good their top line and top pairing is.
And they've got, some decent contribution from another former Leaf. Nazem Kadri's been pretty good this playoffs. He was real hot in the first series. I thought he quieted down a little bit, and that's when Colorado started to run into some issues, but he picked up again, and now they're motoring again.
Hold on, it gets better too. Not only is Nazem Kadri, noted former Leaf, and a former Leaf that the fan base turned on doing well, noted heel from last season, Michael Hutchinson is now the Avs starter and rattled off 2 wins. You can't make this up. He was the Avs' 3rd-string goalie, and he was the Leafs' backup goalie, and he was so bad there, they, again, begged to get rid of him.
The Leafs front office are going to get some very nice Christmas gift baskets this year.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Very nice.
I would have a food taster and a letter opener if I was anyone in the Leafs exec right now.
They're going to get a very, very nicely selected cheese and meats. That's what they're going to get.
Yeah, they're going to be offered some meat, I'll tell you that.
They are never paying for a meal at a road game ever again.
Yeah.
It is the entire Leafs offseason right now encapsulated is their ball bouncing around and then getting skipped by the New York Rangers ball in the Lafreniere lottery. Like, that is everything that's happening to Toronto right now.
Does Toronto have to galaxy brain this then and do the reverse of what the Islanders did? Have a player, get rid of him, let him get his post-Leafs power boost, and then bring him back.
So what you're saying is trade Austin Matthews for a little while.
Exactly. Send him to Arizona, let them have their cup of tea, bring him back when he's scoring 60 goals a year. This is how you fix the Leafs.
Trade Matthews to Arizona, create enough hype where Arizona finally gets to move their team back into Phoenix proper. That's your goodwill. You get some good hockey karma, some good hockey juju from the hockey gods. You get him back, and then the hockey gods say, all right, yeah, you can make the cup finals. And then from there, it's all up to you. And of course, they'll choke it.
Mitch Marner for Jonathan Bernier. Who says no when you know that Jonathan Bernier is going to win a Vezina on his second time through?
I genuinely believe the Leafs should be trading for Jonathan Bernier. Ask Detroit to retain the salary. Steve Yzerman will be like, yeah, I don't care.
Here's the thing, though. The Red Wings don't have another goalie right now. Jonathan Bernier is literally our only goalie.
Well, it's not going to be Jake Allen. Let's talk about that trade. Quick question. What?
Yeah. Okay.
What's the question?
So
my question is what? Like, why was that trade made?
Okay, so I sent out my immediate reaction that I tweeted out after was, I mean, it's a fine price for Jake Allen. They swapped 7th round picks, so who cares? But they gave up a 3rd round pick for Jake Allen. With the season Jake Allen just had and the contract he's under, perfectly reasonable price. I'm not going to sit here and say Montreal overpaid, even though at the beginning of the year we were talking about him as a cap dump possibility. He put up better numbers than Carey Price this year. That's the reality of it. But Montreal's paying $15 million a year for goaltending. And the best excuse I've heard for that is, oh, well, they have the cap space. I mean, you're a team that struggled to score goals and your defensive depth was bad. I mean, yeah, you had the cap space, but there were other places you could have used it where you should have used it. You have Carey Price and they have what? Charlie Lindgren, Caden Primo, and Keith Kincaid in their system. I'm not going to say great backups, but serviceable backups for less than $1 million. I mean, from a value standpoint on the trade, it was fine. It made sense. I just don't get why Montreal was the team that did it.
Yeah. here's the thing. Montreal's rationale here is that what they need to get the best out of Carey Price is for him to not be playing 65 plus games. And I agree. More and more in the NHL, we're seeing that if you have a solid starting goalie, it does not matter who he is. Nobody is Iron Man. And if you need them to go on a deep playoff run, you cannot have them burnt out by the 82 prior games. Great. Don't get a backup who can, it doesn't even need to be a good backup, just a serviceable one that's not going to lose you too many games below like replacement value. A lot of people are going to jump into that point of the argument and say, well, Montreal's crazy if they think they're contenders. I lean towards them also not being as close to contenders as they think they are, but I won't criticize a team who tries to gear themselves towards contending by making sensible moves. And that is a sensible move. Mortgaging all their futures to attain like a middling, overaged guy, that's something different. But no, I think they made a very smart move. They didn't really give up a lot in a vacuum for a backup goalie, like Brad just said. Jake Allen is an ideal guy to eat 30, 35 games and let Carey Price take the playoffs. That said, good on St. Louis for maximizing Jake Allen because he had a great, last season with St. Louis, finished on a hot streak, and all of a sudden his value skyrocketed. I think that would have ebbed away over time, and I think people would have kind of forgotten that, and he would have been labeled more or less as a up and down unreliable goaltender, and they probably wouldn't have had to pay anything for him. And they do have the cap space, and it's just 1 year, so I won't even say that's a bad mentality for the future. No, if Montreal and Marc Bergevin genuinely think that they can contend next year, fine enough move. A 3rd round pick and a 7th round. They swap 7th round picks, so a 3rd round pick. Who cares? But
anything for a rested Carey Price, I think, is worth it.
100%.
And if the experiment doesn't work, it's over at the end of next year.
But I don't think, and Marc Bergevin doesn't care about what happens next, and Montreal doesn't care about what happens next, and I fully respect that. But what I want to say next is that Jake Allen could very well still have been a cap dump had Montreal not rushed it. I don't think they necessarily had to give up an asset. They did, and it wasn't a huge price. Like a 3rd round pick is not a huge price, whatever. But this does way more benefit for St. Louis than I think it does for Montreal in the end. And that's not what Marc Bergevin thinks about. He thinks about what Evan just said, which is that I paid the price to rest Carey Price. This is a rhyme, and if I was more creative, I'd finish it. But regardless, it's hardly a steep price, and it's worth it.
Well, it's a cap dump for St. Louis.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing for them. They want, or they might view that they need to keep Pietrangelo a St. Louis Blue. And this is one of the very key pieces to make that happen.
And they'll still need to make another trade. Vince Dunn's been in rumors for that, which if it's true, Detroit should absolutely be looking into that.
Would like a Vince Dunn.
But I think it's at least worth addressing maybe the controversial opinion that some people might carry about this from St. Louis's standpoint. Should they have traded Jake Allen? Jordan Binnington was a mess this year. And at least with Jake Allen, you've had well over, close to a decade of figuring out what he is, which is an acceptable starting goalie. Not great, not bad. He has his ups and his downs, which is fine, but St. Louis has an elite defense and they can score goals. Jordan Binnington is literally the reason they're not playing right now. You look at all the underlying numbers from their cup run last year, and Jordan Binnington absolutely was good, and he didn't blow it for them, but he wasn't the reason they won. He was getting very few high-quality shots against, and the defense in front of him was doing a lot of the work. He straight up Chris Osgood that cup, which good on him. I'm not convinced Jake Allen wouldn't have done the same thing, but, I mean, to me, Allen would have been the safer option. Yeah, sure, you can hope Binnington bounces back, but as we've seen with Cam Ward's career, that doesn't always happen. So I'm not saying I even know which way I would go if I was the Blues on this one, but I think it's at least worth talking about.
I think it's a wash. I think Binnington won them a cup. I think he's had less time with the organization, and I think Allen has proven to be too up and down. I don't really see it as an issue.
Yeah, and the nice thing is there's a plethora of UFA goalies where once they know what they're going to lock Pietrangelo in at, and once they find that cap space, they can either call somebody up and they're like, Binnington, this is 100% all of you this year, or they can get someone on the cheap because there's a ton of supply in the UFA goalie market right now.
So one question, just because I get ripped on, and I'm going to preemptively get ahead of this before I say it wrong and get ripped on. Is it plethora? I always thought it was plethora.
You're right, Brad. I was going to tell you, get on Evan. You
Okay,
messed up.
okay.
Oh, boo, Evan messed up. You idiot.
It can be both.
No, it's plethora.
I'm going to call it plethora my entire life.
I know. I actually did the same thing. I read the word more than I ever said it as a kid, and then I said plethora, and people looked at me weird. But no, Brad burned you, bro. That's it. Now you have to give him $20. Send him the money right now.
That's not what it says on the Oxford Dictionary, but, you know,
are you just
agree to disagree? What?
Yeah, no, but you bring a good point, Evan. There is... Brad does too, that Evan's stupid and wrong. But Evan, you bring up a good point that there's a lot of supply, and not all of it's going to go cheap. Like Markstrom's not going to come cheap. Jimmy Howard's likely going to go to Edmonton, and you don't really want him. Oh, actually, I don't know. I actually don't think it's crazy for Jimmy Howard to come in and play 20 games and do fine. Craig Anderson is 39 years old.
Here you go, Louis Domingue, $1 million. See you later.
And
Wouldn't be
cookies.
his first in it. Cookies. Like, there's players there, and they're not all like sexy players, but fucking Hutchinson's winning playoff games right now for Colorado. Who cares?
Malcolm Subban, there you go.
Yeah. I'm not sure he'll go to Montreal just based off principle. Although I don't think he's a good enough.
Are we talking about Montreal or St. Louis?
I was talking about Montreal. Like, why would you trade for Jake Allen and just get a free agent?
Yeah. So the only thing to me that I think appeals to Montreal about Jake Allen versus a free agent is it's a 1-year experiment, and I don't know if any of the goalies on the UFA market of Jake Allen's quality would accept a 1-year deal. I mean, I still would have taken that route. If I was Bergevin, I would have preferred to have kept the 3rd-round pick. But hey, no risk in a trade. He's got his guy, and there's always the risk if you go into unrestricted free agency and nobody wants to sign with you, you're out of luck. So I get it. I probably would have taken the risk just because of how many young goalies Montreal has in their system, but I get it.
Yeah, it's like this isn't a world shaker, and it's going to sound like a bunch of Detroit fans mad because an opportunity that for a cap dump, capitalization deal passed by, and a little bit, you know, you're as a Red Wings fan, you're like, what? But no, in all honesty, it was just kind of a weird trade. It wasn't to the degree that it was with Pittsburgh and Toronto, where Pittsburgh, I think, just outright helped Toronto on a lot of fronts. We laugh a lot about bad GMs and like always call the bad GMs. And here's the thing. It's a double-edged sword because the bad GMs could just very well do the same and help other teams that aren't yours. Like a bad GM can go and make a trade with a team that was in a bad spot. And you're just like, you didn't need to do that. They were in a hard spot. Why would you help them? So it kind of cuts both ways on that. Anyhow, like, yeah, in my mind, I would rather just offer like Anton Khudobin and say like, hey, we'll pay you $4.5 million to be a backup this year, 1 year, and you can leave somewhere else after you in. And Khudobin will probably be like, yeah, sure. That's more money that I'll get.
I don't think Khudobin's taking a 1-year deal.
Me neither.
$4.5 million?
Nope.
All right.
He'll get that for sure.
Dude, Dallas is 1 win away from the Cup Finals with him as a starter. He's going to go into this market trying to find a starting job.
Big time. Totally agree.
Well, whatever. You're both stupid. What's wrong with Keith Kincaid? Was he really bad? Oh, yeah, he was bad.
He was a real bad.
Well, maybe the market's not so great. Who knows? Unfortunately, some terrible news for all of us. Despite the great opportunity for the Florida Panthers to have Peter Chiarelli as their GM, the Panthers did the sensible thing and hired always soon-to-be GM, assistant GM out of Columbus, Bill Zito, who worked under Jarmo Kekalainen. Zito was always kind of tapped for interviews for these jobs, and it was always a matter of time. Sad news for all of us who wanted to get Barkov on the cheap from Florida in exchange for Danny DeKeyser. I don't understand why. Well, I understand why the NHL keeps pushing Peter Chiarelli as a candidate, but we weren't so lucky to have him in the Atlantic this time around. So fingers crossed for all 32 teams, or I guess 31 teams at a time, to have Chiarelli land somewhere else. Good hire by Bill Zito, or for Bill Zito. I've always been curious to see what he can do. He's been talked up for a while now.
Yeah, but that whole Panthers front office is a mess right now. Bill Zito's got his work cut out for him. Because they're under, at least according to Friedman, they're under instruction to cut costs this year, which, translation, we're not spending to the cap, jettison players. So, I mean, Florida just signed a franchise goalie. They have 2 franchise forwards and a franchise defenseman. They're not a team that should be cutting costs right now. And if they are, they're a team that has to somehow moneyball this and become a contender because there's no excuses for them. They have their top line franchise center. They have their top line franchise winger. They have their top line franchise defenseman, and they have their franchise goalie. There's no excuses for Florida at this point. Bill Zito has to turn them into a winner, especially while they have Huberdeau and Barkov on these insane value contracts. The fact that they're missing the playoffs, let alone not contending for a cup, is criminal.
Hello, yes, we will take 1 Aaron Ekblad. Thank you.
Jonathan Huberdeau might be the most underrated superstar in this league.
He definitely is right now. So, not a late bloomer. I think he has a normal career trajectory. People just get too ambitious. But yeah, Huberdeau is definitely one of the most underappreciated. How did you, like, that's why I don't think Bill Zito has his work cut out for him that badly. Like, when you have a base of Huberdeau, Barkov, Hoffman, who is admittedly a UFA, like you have Eric Holla on that team, Aaron Ekblad, Keith Yandel, and then Sergei Bobrovsky's $10 million. I don't know. And they have a great head coach as well.
Let's not forget about Mike Matheson's $4 million a year for 7 more years, and he was routinely a healthy scratch this season.
Brad, $4.875 million a year.
Routinely a healthy scratch.
Yeah, that was a bad deal from the moment it was signed. Anyone could have told you that. It is nice to know.
Did you hear Dale Talon? Hold on, before you get into whatever point you're going to make. Have you ever heard Dale Talon's explanation for that contract?
No.
Oh,
yeah. I remember it was bad. It was stupid.
It's a work of art, like Shirelli levels of what the hell are you thinking? Where he's like, yeah, originally we started talking about a 2-year contract, and then we said, why not 4? And then we said, why not 6? And then we said, why not 8? He wanted to be a Panther. And I'm like, oh my God.
I want to be a Panther.
Yeah, I would also like to be a Panther, please. I'll
yeah,
move to Sunrise, California, Florida.
I'll take less than half of what Matheson got, honestly. Dale,
I need the full 4.875. Sorry,
you'll probably get it. Honestly,
potential, targets for Detroit to look at in terms of a cap dump, but man, the guys you'd want have modified or full no trade clauses. Like Anton Strawman's getting paid $5.5 for another few years, 34 years old, and if they're trying to dump, that's a guy, but he's got a modified no trade clause. So I don't know what that entirely contains, but since we're Detroit fans, I don't imagine he's waving to come to us. They have so many good value contracts. I think it was going to be, the dumps are not signing UFAs or their UFAs. Like, it'd be really dumb to let Mike Hoffman walk, but I'm not sure they can afford him. Then they've got Evgeny Dadonov, $4 million coming.
He's a UFA though, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's someone that Detroit should be eyeballing if you're looking for short-term gains and value UFAs. He's put up routinely 50, 60 points since he's come back from Russia, and he only made $4 million. I obviously assume he's going to be coming for a pay raise, but I can't see him commanding crazy dollars or term because of the relatively short track record back in the NHL.
Yeah, he had 25 goals, 22 assists in 69 games this year. Nice. So that's really good. Nice. Really nice.
70 points in 18-19. Yeah, you're right. He has been pretty quietly productive. Good for him. Okay. Anything else about the NHL at large? I'm going to try and keep an eye on this overtime game as well between Philly and the Islanders. Yeah, I'm just about 5 minutes into that.
Yeah, I'm going to try. Well, we'll get through the Jokke interview, then we'll get through our prospect profile, then we'll get through overtime, and hopefully overtime will still be going on. So when we're done overtime, I can go watch overtime.
Well, first, let's talk about Anthony Mantha. So,
oh yeah, I don't like talking about these rumor mills.
Oh no, I'm not talking about the rumor. I don't care about that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. No, I saw on Instagram, Mantha posted he posted his girlfriend's story in his story, and I clicked the post, and it was them walking through their new house in Bloomfield, Michigan.
Sure.
Yeah, or Bloomfield. Yeah, it was Bloomfield Hills, right? I think it was.
Sure. You have no idea how little I care about this kind of stuff.
Well, no, you don't. It was a gorgeous house. It's a huge mansion. And generally, if you're a player who doesn't have a contract signed, you're not buying massive homes. It's different. He's an RFA. So obviously, there's a 99.5% chance that Mantha's going to stay in your mind unless you're a Montreal fan, at which point, please stop. Please, I beg you, stop mocking up trades to trade Max Domi to Detroit. It's not even anything specific. Just stop doing it. It's weird. So obviously he's going to stay in Detroit, but a guy doesn't make a big purchase like that. Gorgeous home, by the way. Good for those two. Unless there's something either done or in the works or almost there. So there's been rumors flying around. You know what? We don't like to talk too much about specifics until they're a little bit more solid. I think we've put feelers out there. There's nothing specific we've seen or heard yet, but there's been rumblings, rumors from whoever you ask about 4 to 5 years, anywhere from 4.5 to 6 mil. Who knows? I kind of think it's coming soon just by the fact that house was bought, but there's still a lot of time.
If Anthony Mantha takes $4.5 million on a long-term deal, I'm tattooing that on my ass.
If Anthony Mantha takes a long-term deal for $4.5 million, I'll tattoo a picture of your ass with the tattoo that you get on my ass. Evan, your turn.
I am not getting involved in this.
So I'm not actually doing that, but
buzzkills.
I mean, I got a wife who will divorce me if I do that, I'm pretty sure. And she likes Mantha.
You got your 2 kids in. What do you need it for, man?
I don't want to pay child support, man. They're expensive enough.
No, I didn't say what do you need her for. You definitely need her.
Oh, okay.
You are a broken, pathetic man, let me tell you.
Yeah, thank you. But so here's the thing, and this is why I don't take a ton of credence to this. So can we look into this and say that a contract is done? No, absolutely not. Can we glean that he thinks a contract's going to come and he's not planning on getting traded? Sure, but the fact he bought an expensive house shouldn't factor in at all. We are talking about a guy who made $6 million over the last 2 years. It's not exactly like he hasn't been in a position to buy a big ass house to this point in his career. So.
Yeah. But who likes unpacking and then repacking again soon after,
Exactly. It's a good sign. It means he's...
Yeah, I'm sure he definitely has those problems that we do.
Yeah, right? Right? It's not like he just would pay someone to do it all.
The amount of times I look at a pic... 1 second, Brad, before you make whatever point you're going to make. You like that, Evan?
That is passive aggressive.
I'm just trying to make Evan laugh. The amount of times I look at Mantha and I think, man, I see me in Anthony Mantha. It's just ridiculous.
Is it because you think
completely different than you?
It's the shoulders.
No, it's because Ryan thinks Mantha's a bear and he might actually eat Ryan. That is the only way Ryan will ever see Ryan inside of Anthony Mantha.
I'll take it. All right, go ahead. I rudely cut you off for the sake of a terrible joke, which both Evan didn't laugh at, and then Evan didn't laugh at my joke after, so I'm going to shut up for the next 10 minutes.
I don't remember what point I was trying to make, but I'll take it as a good sign that he's buying a house in Detroit. That's the end of my statement. It's concrete to nothing, and I read almost nothing into it, but it certainly doesn't hurt anything.
Well, on the heels of Brad's annoying sensibility, we are now going to cut to our interview with head of European scouting for Dobber prospects, Jokke Nevalainen. This was a great chat. You guys will see everything we talked about. We kind of pulled them in 10 different directions, which is always fun for us, but I don't know if it's so fun for the person on the other side. But he did a great job with it. So without further ado, enjoy our interview with Jokke. Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast's first ever interview with the head of European scouting over at Dobber Prospects. We are joined by Jokke Nevalainen. Jokke, thank you for being so flexible with how we're going to pronounce your name and Finnish names today, and thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to be here.
So we were chatting a little bit before, and we were laughing that this is going to seem like a strategic interview to have you on now, because you're obviously, for those who read your work, and I hope all of our listeners do, you're a big proponent of Lucas Raymond. And that all bias considered here, so are we for the most part. So it's good to have you on today, and it's nice to have someone in our, I don't want to say in our corner. I think we're open to all prospects and we don't have any hard decisions, but it'll be nice to hear some pro Lucas Raymond feedback today, unless everything has changed.
No, Lucas Raymond has been my number 3 guy for almost 2 years now. So I don't think I'm going to change that at this point.
Okay, so let's just jump right into that then. What makes Lucas Raymond, in your mind, the 3rd best prospect in this draft, especially over guys like Tim Stutzle or Rossi or Cole Perfetti?
Well, I just love everything he does. He doesn't really have any weaknesses. You could consider his average size to be a weakness, but I think it's not. He doesn't play like a small player. He's not afraid to go to the battle areas, and he competes really, really well. So even as an average-sized guy, I don't have any problems with the way he plays. And then when it comes to his skills and skating and all that, I think they are just high-end, among the highest in this draft class. So just the vision, the way he sees the ice, the way he sees the other players, he can see through traffic and find those tough passing lanes. It's just all there, the whole package. I've been watching him very closely for 2 years, and I haven't really seen anything that would concern me.
So one of the follow-ups we get from our listeners and anybody we talk to about having Lucas Raymond as high as we do is, I'm not going to call them the detractors, but the people who are pro someone else at 4 will point to his less than stellar numbers in the SHL. As someone who watches the SHL a lot more closely than we do, and obviously than anybody in North America would, how would you explain why that's not a huge issue to you?
Well, first of all, Frölunda is one of the best teams in Europe, all leagues considered, even the KHL. I think they would be among the top teams in the KHL if they happen to play there. So it's a great organization, stacked with high-end players, very experienced players who have played a long career, and they just didn't have any room for Raymond there. He was mostly playing on the 4th line or as their extra forward, the 13th forward. So his minutes were very, very limited. And a guy like him who is an offensive player needs to have that puck on his stick. It's not going to happen if he plays 5 minutes a game.
So considering the Detroit Red Wings specific situation here, they're obviously they have a lot of options wide open to them. Moritz Seider with the surprise 6th overall pick last year, and then with a different kind of surprise, Philip Zadina the year before. A lot of people are looking forward here, or looking to take a forward here because they believe having picked a right-handed defenseman last draft would kind of preclude them from needing Jamie Drysdale. Do you see Lucas Raymond as having the highest upside out of all of the available picks at number 4? Or do you see him as being the most likely to reach his ceiling? Or is it some combination of both?
Well, I think it's a bit of a combination of both. So for me personally, I think Raymond, Stutzle, and Rossi are all in this same tier at 3 to 5. So I see those 3 being really, really close to each other. I just happen to prefer Raymond, but I could definitely see either Stutzle or Rossi ahead of him. But after those 3, I think there's a bit of a gap at 6. So in that sense, I would really, unless I had a really urgent need for a defenseman, I would definitely take a forward there.
So with obviously you ranking Lucas Raymond at 3, but the consensus having Tim Stutzle in there, and a lot of rumors floating around right now that Stutzle actually might go second overall to the Kings. Do you think that I'm going to call it the mega high praise of Stutzle is warranted? Do you think there should be legit consideration for him at number 2, given that we have Lafreniere and Byfield in this draft as well?
I don't really see it. I think Lafreniere and Byfield are in a tier of their own. I think there's a gap between those two and then the other 3 after them. I'm not really sure where the Stutzle hype is coming from. If we even look at the World Juniors, which seems to be what is driving it for the most part, I think Raymond was about equally good there. He just played a much smaller role because he plays for Sweden, a much better team compared to Germany. So I think even that best situation where Stutzle stood out, I think Raymond was right up there with him, and everything else considered, it's not enough to push Stutzle ahead of Raymond for me.
Jokke, a common question that we get is this player that the Red Wings are going to draft 4th overall going to be their best prospect, Zadina included, automatically? Do you think that is a answer or do you think that's a question where the answer is yes, no matter who they pick? And specifically, does Raymond automatically come in ahead of Seider and Zadina from what you know of those young guys?
That's a tough question. I think I would probably put Seider at number 1 from the current prospects. And I think Raymond is right up there. I would probably put Raymond ahead of him, Rossi as well, maybe. But if they go with someone else like Drysdale or Perfetti, I think I might put those 2 behind Seider.
So obviously the Red Wings fans have been focusing, us included, a lot on pick number 4 for obvious reasons. But the one thing that's the quarantine and the pandemic and the expanding the draft coverage this year has caused is a lot of us to start doing some real deep dives later in the draft, specifically the 2nd round, given that the Red Wings have 3 picks. And most of the favorite options that I've seen coming up in mocks, rankings, whatever you want to look at, for Detroit at pick 32 is the European prospects. All things considered, assuming the draft follows your rankings relatively closely and knowing the state of the Red Wings franchise, who are some of the, I hate the word ideal, but let's say ideal European prospects that the Red Wings should be looking at realistically at 32?
Well, yeah, two names that I think realistically could be there at 32, who I have clearly higher than that in the top 20, are Noel Gunler, the Swedish winger from Luleå, and defenseman Helge Grans from Malmö. So I think those 2 are 2 great options that I think are definitely top 20 talents. But the consensus seems to be that they are more in that late 1st, early 2nd round range. So I would really, if they were still available, I would absolutely take one of those 2. Gunler has a bad rep for no good reason, I think. I think all the issues have been overblown badly. And I think he could really be a top 10 talent out of this draft class if he can just figure out how to put his whole game together and find a bit more motivation and a better engine for himself. Someone needs to push him a little bit. But if he can do that, I think Gunler could be a top 10 talent out of this draft class.
Now, with that being said, one of the things that Yzerman's known for as a GM is everybody he drafts has to have a high compete level. That is number 1 on his list of requirements, and it's not much of a secret considering Yzerman keeps everything else he does an absolute secret. Do you think that a lot of those perceptions with Gunler are because of the style he plays, or are there legitimate compete concerns there? Because we all know he has the talent, and obviously you believe in his talent immensely, rightfully so. But do you think there's enough there for Yzerman to get past his requirements?
Well, I think it really depends on how he interviews. So they need to trust that he will give a better effort going forward. It's there sometimes, but it's not there every time. That's the big problem I see right now, that he's not consistent with his effort. When he's at his best, he can give a great performance on the ice in every area, but he has too many of those bad games. So yeah, I think it just depends on how much they trust that he will figure it out. I don't think it's gonna be something that can't be coached, but they need to make that decision, obviously, that do they trust that they can get the best out of him every night.
So a big theme with this draft, obviously, is that it's very top heavy, or there's a lot of really, really high end talent that runs deeper than you would typically find. And so what we're seeing is guys like Alexander Holtz and Anton Lundell being ranked, 7th, 10th, 12th, and beyond. What we've kind of come to is that this shouldn't be a discount of their potential and their talent, because, somebody who picks up Holtz could have a premier goal scorer for the rest of his career. Is their ranking, or is their kind of status compared to other players just a symptom of how deep this draft is? And if so, are teams going to have an opportunity to get a way better player than they typically would at, pick 7 or pick 9 than they would in other years?
Yeah, I do think so. I think in most years, Holtz would be a top 5 pick. He's just that level of a talent. But this year, I don't see it happening. I think he's going to slide to the 6 to 10 range. So someone is really going to get a great talent in that range where you usually get like a top 6 guy, whereas now you're getting a top line scorer who can possibly put up 40 plus goals in a season. So yeah, the top 10 is awesome this year. That's the best way I can put it, I guess.
So obviously us and you and everybody in the prospecting world has spent an insane amount of time on 2020 just because of the amount of time we've had. You guys I think we're one of the first outlets I've seen to release a ranking for 2021. So given that the Red Wings are going to be a train wreck next year as well, we might as well talk about that. So at the top of your guys' list, and conveniently for you, had a Finnish player. I'm going to try and say this. Please don't judge me. Attu Rattu. And he is not viewed as a Lafreniere or a Byfield type of talent, but he's still first overall. What do you make of him holding the number 1 spot throughout the year, and what ultimately might his high-end ceiling be?
Well, yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of competition for first overall next year, so there is no obvious number 1 guy. If Rattu was available in 2020, I think he would be battling for 3rd overall, so outside the top 2. So that's just how it happens to break, that that draft class doesn't seem to have that elite talent that you usually see at the top, but he's still a great prospect. So I see a lot of like Logan Couture type player out of him. So a solid number 1 center who can be used in any situation, can play big minutes, but not like a 80-plus point player, more of a 75, 70-point player. So that type of talent, I think, is there available. And then after him, it's mostly just defensemen who are running the show after him.
So it's a nice antithesis to this year where it's the exact opposite. We've got maybe 1 defenseman ranked in the top 10 next year, and there's 4 or 5 in the top 10 for next year already. That's got to be a promising sign if Detroit goes forward this year.
Yeah, they should really get a great defenseman next year if they have a top 10 pick. I think we had like 5 or 6 defensemen in the top 10, something like that. So yeah, it's going to be a great class for defense.
Speaking of positional picks, and I'm sorry, I'm going to bring us right back to 2020 here. it's almost become a meme at this point, and it shouldn't, because he's a very real prospect. But anytime Yaroslav Askarov is mentioned for 4th overall, we all just kind of like wince because of obviously Detroit's needs all over the ice and the inherent risk that comes with picking a goaltender. Tell us what you know about Askarov, what you think he can be, and how crazy of a pick would he be at 4th overall?
Well, yeah, I think he could live up to that 4th overall selection if everything breaks right. I think he has that type of upside to be a franchise goalie, a Vezina Trophy contender year after year. So any team would love to have a goalie like that you can just plug him in for 60 plus games in a season, and you don't have to worry about his performance at any point. So yeah, there is definitely that upside, but with goalies, there's clearly more risk, a bit more waiting time as well. So yeah, not a pick I would personally make, but if they took Askarov at number 4, I wouldn't really be sad about it. I think he could definitely live up to that selection.
So obviously Askarov's a possibility at 4, but not likely. But Detroit does have a reputation for taking a goalie just about every draft. And they have 3 second-round picks this year, technically 4 if you want to count their 3rd-round pick getting bumped up 1 spot because of Arizona's forfeiture. Who are some of the goalies that Detroit should be looking at in the 2nd or 3rd round, in your opinion?
Well, I think out of Europe, my top guy would be Joel Blomqvist from Finland. I have him somewhere in the mid-2nd round, I think. I can check really quickly, yeah. I have him around 60, actually, so late 2nd round. But a 6'2" goalie, just barely. So he's slightly smaller than what you would like to have. But I think his quickness and his ability to read the game are enough to make him a legitimate NHL starter in the future. He has a bad tendency to speed out pucks. He needs to control those better, direct them to the corners if he can't catch them, and so on. But I think those are fixable mistakes that he is making right now, considering he's just an 18-year-old goalie. So he has a great track record at every level. He's going to play against men this upcoming season. It's going to be a great way for him to learn more and continue developing. And yeah, I see a very bright future for him.
Now, we asked you all those fun questions about Lucas Raymond, but we'd be remiss in not also pointing out the fact that you had Marco Rossi ranked right up there with him. So a little bit about Marco Rossi, with him being, this supposed small but mighty two-way center. Do you see him having that same upside in the NHL, or do you see him as a guy who might be more likely to flip over to the wing? I know a lot of people kind of cap his ceiling as a little bit lower. Is that something you agree with?
Well, yeah, I think the concerns are that I do see him transitioning to the wing most likely. It's just so rare for someone his size to be a center, especially like a number 1 center. So we have Braden Point who's able to do that, but that's just about it. You don't really have many examples of that happening. So yeah, I think it's likely that he transitions to the wing. And then I have some concerns that I haven't really seen him at wing, so I'm not sure how he's going to adjust to that. Some players can do it seamlessly, even maybe be better at wing, and some players seem to struggle when they move to the wing. So I think that's probably the reason I have him, even though I have him in the same tier with Raymond and Stutzle, then just him being the final option there out of those 3.
All right. And to kind of wind things down here, I think most of our listeners, I know a couple specifically, would scream at us if we didn't ask you about your thoughts on some of the Red Wings prospects who played in Europe this year, specifically Elmer Soderblom and Albert Johansen. What did you see from them this year? And do you think they have, at this point, legitimate NHL upside or beyond?
Yeah, Johansson really proved me wrong, I guess. I didn't have him in that kind of range where they took him. I was a bit surprised by the selection, but the way he played this season, they made an awesome choice there. He's definitely projecting to be better even than where he was taken. So I see definite top 4 upside in Johansson. He's going to take a couple of years still developing. He's still a bit, needs to add some muscle, needs to get stronger and all that. But the talent is definitely there. The skating is definitely there. He has the all-around game. He's not just a one-trick pony. He can do it all. He can play in any situation. So, yeah, I think they made an awesome selection there. And with Soderblom, I think there is NHL potential there, but I think he has a long way to go. His skating with his size and his hands with his size, I think that's rare to see. You don't usually have a 6'7" guy who plays an offensive skill game. So usually those guys play a physical defensive game, but he's all about offense, and that's rare to see. But it's going to take some time before he can put it all together. He did it last year at the junior level, which was great to see. Now he needs to take that next step, put it all together at the men's level. It's going to be much tougher to do, but I think he has all the tools to do it.
Okay, Jokke. Well, I think we've put you through the ringer with about 20 different topics today, so we're going to wrap up. Everyone, this is Jokke Nevalainen, head of European scouting at Dobber Prospects, and of course, one of the hosts with Tony Ferrari over at the Dobber Draftcast. Jokke, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure we're going to ask you back again. There's plenty more to talk about for this draft and next, but for now, we appreciate it and take care.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And that was our interview with Jokke Nevalainen. Good to have him on, and appreciate him taking up his evening. He was 7 hours ahead of us when we recorded that. So appreciate him taking the time over from Finland. Okay, more prospect stuff. This is going to be an unpopular one, but maybe a popular one because we are going to begin our major prospect previews. So we might revisit some guys. We might be doing some guys, their profiles for the first time, but we are not only going to be talking about them as draft eligible players and their profiles. We are also going to be talking about how this fits in as a Detroit Red Wings pick, where they would fit in the organization, the likelihood of it, how we feel about them being picked, so on and so forth. So from now up until the draft, which is a month away, each episode will be highlighting a player who could, by all rights, be a Detroit Red Wings draft pick.
At number 4 specifically.
This is the big one. This is the big shebang. So we're going to start with the most unpopular one, I think, just to kind of get it out of the way. And even though I gave it that qualifier, people are inevitably going to yell at us, and I'd rather try to avoid that. So let's rip off the Band-Aid. Defenseman Jake Sanderson as a possible Detroit Red Wings 4th overall pick. Brad, you lead the charge.
So first thing about how we're going to be doing this, if everybody follows everybody we're going to track over the next month about who could be a Detroit pick, we are eliminating all options, which means someone else who we don't cover is going to get picked like last year.
It's Emil Andre.
So if you're like Team Anton Lundell, you're going to like us. But yeah, Jake Sanderson. So I don't think it's a secret. There's not many Red Wings fans out there who would be happy with this pick, but whether we want to admit it or not, there's a higher percentage of it happening than we think, strictly because of what happened with Mo Seider last year. If nothing else, Mo Seider last year shows two things. One, Yzerman's not afraid to go off the board, and he likes those big, defensive, excellent skating defensemen. You could make an argument that Jake Sanderson's a better skater than Mo Seider. I don't know if I would make it, but he's in the conversation. And Jake Sanderson probably has better offensive upside than Mo Seider does, although I don't think he is as good defensively. But again, all things are in the range of each other. So, and he shoots left. So you could literally put him on a pairing with Mo Seider and have like your shutdown pair for the next 15 years if you wanted. But here's the thing. He's not good enough to go fourth overall. That's just the reality of it in my mind. There's way better options. Sanderson's a fine player. If you like Mo Seider, there is literally no reason you shouldn't like Jake Sanderson. The only reason you shouldn't like Jake Sanderson is because he's not a value pick at fourth overall. And he's not. He's not in my top 10 at the moment. So this is what it is. I didn't have Mo Seider in my top 15 last year, so we've been proven wrong before. And hey, if it happens, maybe we're proven wrong again. But there's a lot to like about the guy. He is an excellent defender. He is an excellent skater. He is a smart hockey player. I would say he's got very limited offensive upside, but for about a month or two before the shutdown, he was really showing some things in the offensive zone. Mind you, he's playing against juniors. Mo Seider never did for a full season. So again, not exactly apples to apples. But we have to consider the fact that this guy is right up Yzerman's alley.
Jake Sanderson is a good player. Like, he's a good player, and we very well could be looking at a universe where, you know, let's say Yzerman didn't pick Mo Seider 6th last year. He took Trevor Zegras. And this year is when he went off the board for the supremely talented defensive defenseman with maybe an untapped offensive upside who is a good skater as well. That's legitimately the exact same mold as Mo Seider, but on the left side. So there's a good question to be asked here by proponents for Jake Sanderson to say, well, if we can be accepting of Mo Seider as the pick eventually, why couldn't we do the same for Jake Sanderson? And here's my answer to that. And I think I don't want to speak for Evan, and we'll get to him in a minute here, but I think the general consensus, at least among Red Wings fans, is that Jake Sanderson isn't the preferred pick here. And I think you do have to factor Mo Seider in. Steve Yzerman took a huge risk when he passed on the offensive talent that was available at pick 6 last year to take Mo Seider. He identified the Red Wings' need for an all-around capable defenseman, a guy who can just do everything. And that's what they're hoping Mo Seider is going to be. And that's what he's looking like he has a good chance to be as well. Was it my favorite pick? No, absolutely not. Do I still think now that Trevor Zegras could likely be the better player? Yeah, absolutely. But I have a hard time getting mad at a player who can do what Mo Seider looks like he can do on the ice. I don't know if I can do that again, right? Like, I don't know if I can be willing to make that leap again. Yes, he's a great skater. Yes, he's a great defender with awesome defensive instincts, he's a very mature defender, and that's hard to find in a defenseman. And yeah, he is perfectly capable offensively. He makes a good first pass. He has a good eye for that side of the ice, but he's not a dynamic offensive defenseman like you see in Jamie Drysdale. And I think that's what sets Drysdale apart as the premier defensive pick at the top of this draft. I've had some people ask me, like, oh, what's the difference between the two? I thought you were a defensive defenseman guy. I am. I play defense. I really value when people pick defensemen who can actually play the position.
Scratch that one off your bingo cards, everyone.
I made a mistake trying to go after Brad. Now Evan's going to strike at me because I'm vulnerable. He shook me. I don't think that it is. I just don't think it's the right move to leave that much offensive talent on the board again. I don't think he's good enough for a 4th overall pick. I would have thought the same thing about Mo Seider last year, but there's only so many times you can take that risk in my mind. And especially in this draft, like, you're looking at, correct me if I'm wrong here, guys, but I view this as the amount of talent that will be on the board at number 4 is as if Turcotte had fell to number 6 last year.
I like everybody ranked, at least on my own personal rankings, 8 or higher more than I liked Turcotte at this point last year. Like, that's
I loved Turcotte last year.
And I did too. And that's how good this draft is to me. I don't think Turcotte's in the tier of Rossi, Raymond, Stutzle, maybe not even Holtz or Perfetti, truthfully. I think those last two is pretty close, but I would not be surprised if in a redraft and you threw him in here, he goes close to 10. That's just the way it is. But the one thing too that we have to look back on is interviews with Yzerman about last year's draft. He said that there were a couple guys they wanted, but unfortunately the top 5 went as he expected, which makes me think that as much as he likes Seider, if Turcotte or Doc had fallen, he would have drafted them. So it's not like he went into that draft and said, we are taking a defenseman. He liked his guy. Would he have picked a forward if Turcotte or Doc was there? Yeah, maybe. And who knows what conversation we're having right now. But that was when he was picking outside the top 5. Now he's picking inside the top 5, which it's only 2 spots, but it's a stronger forward draft, and it is in the top 10. So 2 spots is a lot. So even though Yzerman likes his defensive defenseman, even though Jake Sanderson's probably going to be a very good player, even though it's still within the realm of possibility, I have a hard time seeing it happening this year. But we got to examine this. What if he does it? What are the benefits here? Well, the benefits are the left side of Detroit's defense is a mess and the system doesn't have a ton coming through. I'm still on the Cholowski train. I still think there's an NHL defenseman there. Albert Johansen, as Jokke was saying, looks like he's got top 4 upside. McIsaac, maybe. But here's the thing with all 3 of them. Those are all big maybes. If you get Jake Sanderson in there, he's probably more of a certainty than any of those 3. So then you do get some balance on the blue line, and that would be a huge benefit to the Red Wings going forward.
What else to add? Yeah, I think if you want to look at like comparing Jamie Drysdale to Jake Sanderson, Jamie Drysdale kind of plays that more like rover style defense where he's he does play defense, but he definitely roams into the offensive zone. You'll see him below the net quite often, whereas Jake Sanderson kind of plays that more traditional offense for a defenseman. You know, he mans the point. He keeps pucks low and gets them onto the net. He's got an okay shot. It's not a bomb by any means, but you know, and he looks like he could potentially, you know, power play a power play a quarterback a power play at the NHL level. And I think he's exceeded a lot of expectations that people had for him. And I think if he, you know, adds a little bit of size, because I think he's only like 180 pounds. It's pretty small for a defenseman in the NHL. And he just continues to grow. I think like the very bottom for him is like a top 4 defenseman on a team. That being said, do I want him at number 4? I would be shocked. Mm-hmm. I'd be very, very shocked because I think the pulse of this draft is very deep forwards. Someone's going to balk and get the second defenseman very early. And obviously Yzerman would be aware of that. So I don't think he's target number 1 for Detroit, but after last year, who even knows anymore? I really do like Jake Sanderson, and whoever drafts him, I think he's going to go a lot. He probably will go in the top 10, I think. Yeah. They're getting a very high quality prospect who's going to be in the NHL in 1 to 2 years, I think.
Well, it's going to be interesting because if the rumor, like every team in the top 5 is linked to a prospect at each pick. So if those rumors are true, we pretty much have a pretty good idea of how the top 5 is going to go. And that would include 0 defensemen at this moment. And then you have Anaheim, New Jersey, Buffalo picking all teams that could use defensemen. So there's a reality where there's 0 defensemen in the top 5, but 2 in the top 7. That might very well happen.
Yeah, you know, GMs are just always horned up for those like blue collar, hardworking with a potential offensive upside defenseman. Like Jake Sanderson will have a massive lineup of teams who want him.
And I know I mentioned it in our mock draft, but I'll repeat it there. There's where Jake Sanderson is going in this draft. His floor is Winnipeg. I cannot see him getting past them.
What is Winnipeg draft at?
10 or 11, I think.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. If I'm the Red Wings and we're in that spot, I'd be thrilled with Jake Sanderson. Of course, he'd want, let's say the Red Wings had a better year than they did, and they were drafting like 10th or 11th, and let's say every ideal offensive piece was off the board. Jake Sanderson was probably who I'd be gunning for in terms of who's realistically there, or I might be one of the people pushing for Askarov in that range. He's like Evan said, I don't see him being a bad player, and I don't see him having a likelihood of busting out unless his defensive abilities completely fall apart at the NHL level. If you're looking at a Seider Sanderson or a Hronek Sanderson top pairing, like, oh shit, that's a force to be reckoned with in terms of overall potential. But the reality is that's not where Detroit's picking. Yeah. The reality is there's too many offensive pieces there.
We're too high in the draft order to go after a Jake Sanderson.
And even though I already pointed out that there is room for improvement on Detroit's left side, like in the system and on the actual team, I will still argue there's much bigger needs at forward right now.
Oh,
absolutely.
For sure. Yeah. Like, defensive ability is not easy to buy. For sure, there's actually a premium on that, but if you're a team with way, way, way too many holes, you need to fill in the most important pieces first, and that starts with scoring goals and winning games. And
I would much prefer us to take Jamie Drysdale, who we know can drive offense 100%. And play it. We can round out his defensive game.
100%. Yeah, completely agree. And it's bad because we're coming out harsh on Sanderson, and it's not about him at all. It's about context of the team. I've come around on him a lot as a top 10 pick. I used to think it would be a bigger reach for a team, but watching his game more and more, I think that people are just a little bit slow to recognize what he could bring. I don't see him as having a huge offensive upside, although I do really, really value a complete game, and I think that's what he has. Couple that with great skating. Yeah, team in the top 10, go for it. Would never blame you. My preference at number 4, 0. The likelihood at number 4, I would call it minimal, like lowest tier likelihood of the reasonable picks in my mind.
I still will argue, though, that there might not be a prospect in this draft who got hurt by the shutdown more than Sanderson, though, because he was really coming on as everything shut down. So if he was at the Five Nations tournament over in Europe for U18 players, he led the tournament in scoring, not as a not for defensemen, like overall, he led the tournament in scoring. He had the huge top prospects game in the States, and again, his offensive game was coming around. So if we had an extra 2 months of the season and we had the end of year U18 Worlds, we might not be balking at him at number 4 at this point if he continued the trajectory he was on. Is that likely? No, but you just don't know, and that's what makes this draft more than most way more unpredictable. Like we sit here preaching, oh yeah, I got my top 4 set, I've got my top 8 set. We don't know shit because of all the video scouting that has to go on, because of the shutdown, because of the inconclusives, I'm too tired to talk.
Inconclusive?
There we go. But whatever. I'm not ruling anything out at this possibility. I'm not ruling out Jake Sanderson going to 3 to Ottawa at this point, honestly. Not betting on it, but I'm not ruling it out.
And he's from Whitefish, Montana. Hell of a town. Nasty hangover from there.
You actually been to Whitefish, Montana?
It's beautiful. I 100% recommend going there.
Who are you?
Yeah, I've been to Montana and Wyoming.
You're a weird guy, man. You're a weird guy. Like, Brad's weird, but you're weird. You're weird when you should. Brad should be weird. You're weird when you shouldn't be weird. Like, I'm weird, but you can tell that because I speak too much and about things that don't matter. But people look at you and they expect a normal guy, and then you come out with just weird shit like that. Yeah,
when I told people I was going to Wyoming for a ski trip, they looked at me like I had 2 heads.
No, the last thing we need is 2 heads. It's more complaints from the people on YouTube.
Yeah, jeez.
We could have filled up the other square.
That's true.
Can you imagine, instead of having the one square at the logo, we have Evan and then another Evan just duplicated right there? Like, there, we made him smaller. You guys happy?
Yeah, he's just reversed, staring at himself the whole time.
All right, I'm going to bring us to overtime here on this midweek episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast. This is brought to you exclusively by Patreon supporters, our Winged Wheel Podcast patrons. In addition to a lot of other cool bonuses, get their comments read out on midweek episodes exclusively as our way of saying thank you for supporting the show. We did a draw today, and Eric Schrader is the one who won our Upper Deck Hockey sponsored giveaway, which was a Dylan Larkin and a Steve Yzerman card. So congratulations, Eric. You will be getting those soon. Brad is showing them on the camera on YouTube right now. And we have plenty more Upper Deck giveaways to come, including some bigger ones. So those are going to be
some real big ones. Like we're talking couple $100 giveaways, like biggins.
Most of these are Patreon exclusive. So all of our lovely patrons, thank you so much for your automatic entries and your bonus entries for you guys who shared. Without further ado, we'll start with Dylan Krill, who says, "Hey guys, do you think we could take advantage of St. Louis and package a deal with Cholowski and picks to get Vince done? Would they even consider that?"
Is there a reality where that could happen? Yeah, because Cholowski comes in cheaper and the picks would be a good sweetener. I don't know if Vince Dunn's that big of an upgrade from Cholowski, though. Again, we haven't seen what Dennis Cholowski is yet. Cholowski, what he projects as, if everything goes well, is Vince Dunn. So, yeah, you skip a step and you give a couple prospects to do it, which is fine. I mean, Vince Dunn's not old. It's not the worst bet in the world, but I don't think I would give up much more beyond Cholowski to make that happen. But if St. Louis wants to do it for a third or a fourth, sure, I could see a reality where that makes sense.
Is Vince Dunn an RFA?
Yes, and he'll be a big raise in not a big raise, but a decent raise in St. Louis. If they want to keep Pietrangelo, are not going to be able to keep everybody else.
Yeah, the other person I was thinking about when we were talking earlier about St. Louis was an Alex Steen. But guess who has a full no trade clause?
I don't know. You never know the context, right? Like if those guys know the little writings on the wall and the GM goes to them and say like, "Hey, like, I'm sorry, we need you moved. You either waive this or you're scratched."
He was born in Winnipeg, but he's technically Swedish. So, maybe there's an opportunity there.
Yeah, some mafia connections.
Hey, solves our second line center problem. I mean, it doesn't. It's just a slightly less of a problem, but hey, upgrades.
Filling the Islanders going into second OT. Awesome. James Phoenix says, "Good day, lads. With Jake Allen being snapped up by Montreal despite a deep goalie pool, do you think Yzerman now possibly looks outside of free agency to find a capable backup in case we can't find attract any of the big names in free agency?" Heard on 31 Thoughts about Columbus goalie depth and mentioned that 6'6" monster Daniil Tarasov seems to be as far down as 5th in the Columbus pecking order. It might be a viable option to come in to develop. Is there anyone similar that you guys may have seen to be a surplus on another team? Keep up the great work as always, and here's to Lucas Raymond hopefully coming in at 4, even though I believe Goal Spaghetti will get the nod. Either way, I'll be stoked. Cheers, boys.
So, yeah, Columbus has the world of Merzlikins anagrams in their system, and we could take one of them. They're young, they're good, they have potential. That's the plus. They'll also probably be expensive, which is a negative. But, hey, you got to do what you got to do to get a starting goal in the NHL. I would not be surprised if Yzerman waits till free agency to see what dominoes fall where, specifically in Vancouver, because Vancouver's made it no secret they really want to keep Markstrom. But with the Seattle expansion draft coming up, they know if they do keep Markstrom, they will lose Demko. So I would not be surprised to see that as a target for Yzerman, especially considering Vancouver needs a lot of cap relief, and Detroit could easily take one Louis Eriksson and his $6 million off their books. Again, until the UFA dominoes fall, I don't know how many more moves are going to be made. I'm surprised the Montreal-St. Louis trade went down because of how much has to happen here. So those are the two that come to mind immediately, but there will be more.
Denny OD says, "Yo, my last couple comments were depressing, so here's a fun one. What player do you or did you want as a Red Wing based solely on the name? I would love to see a trade for Dante Fabro so we can have both Fabry and Fabro. Another name I really like is Maverick Bork. That's just a good hockey name. Hoping he can get to us in the second round. Cheers."
Oh, I have the easiest answer here, and I think he's eligible for this draft, if I'm not mistaken, like a mid-round pick. I want the Red Wings to select Gunnar Wolf Fontaine.
That's amazing. That's incredible.
But it's not Red Wings related. Speaking of another mid-round pick, I want the New York Rangers desperately to select Alex Laferriere. They are different.
As hell.
They have to do it.
I've always liked Victor Arvidsson. I like his name. And in terms of players who have played for the Red Wings in the past, I think a great name, just an overall awesome hockey name, is Keith Primo. I think that's just an underrated. Like, we take it for granted because we hear it so much, but Keith Primo is just an excellent name, and he was a Red Wing, so happy about that.
No, his brother had the better name, Wayne Primo.
That's true. It seemed like someone forgot Keith's name and just guessed what the first name was, which I sometimes do.
He plays hockey. It's pretty good. Wayne.
Evan Lobsinger is a good hockey name.
Oh, yes.
Hannah's not.
Yeah, I can't really think of any current players. I was like, for some reason, when I was super young, I loved Bill Guerin. I have no idea why. I just did.
Here's the thing. Out of the three of us, Evan's the only one with a hockey name because his name naturally shortens down to a proper hockey nickname. Without him ever telling me, I know Evan's hockey nickname was Lobs.
Or Lobby.
Lobby.
Or
I would
Lobby.
say Lobby.
Either works. Our last names don't work for that.
Yours get longer and more difficult.
No,
I
mine.
think you have a good name for the back of a jersey, Brad. I think Crisco is a good name, but in terms of yelling it on the ice, you're right. I got used to people calling me Hannah, but like every 50th game I'd play, like someone on the other team would laugh and I'd be like, what? And they'd be like, Hannah? And I'd be like, oh yeah, I forgot that's a girl's name.
Yeah, I've never had a nickname in hockey. I've always just been Crisco. That's it. I've never heard my first name. I've never heard a nickname. Just Crisco.
Lobby.
It's boring.
Nick Hill says, hey everybody, I just finished my move to Midtown for school. I'm a little disappointed that I won't be able to walk to the LCA since there's no hockey there right now. But on the bright side, yesterday I walked to the DIA and it only took about 5 minutes. It ended up being worth it as they had a new exhibit on Trebucket. Detroit Institute of Arts, highly recommend for anyone who hasn't been. Joe Delia says, sup guys. First off, has anyone noticed that Evan kind of looks like Alex Tuck?
Yep.
A little bit, eh? Yeah.
Let me look.
We've noticed.
Might be the eyebrows. Yes. Anyways, I find myself rooting for the Avs against Dallas. Are either of you guys also? I feel almost dirty or guilty for doing it, but Natty Mac is so damn fun to watch. I mean, is it even a rivalry anymore? The last event I can remember was that boarding McLeod did on Croner, and that was 7 years ago? Oh man, the Bertuzzi sucker punch, the spear on him beforehand. Just curious on your opinion on the rivalry. Thanks, guys.
The rivalry's dead to me, honestly. It's fun and nostalgia, but I mean, I can't say I'll ever be a fan of the Avs or really truly cheer for them, but god damn do I love watching McKinnon, Landeskog, and Makar and Rantanen out there. They are easily the most fun team left in the playoffs to watch. So, I mean, not like I'll be jumping up and down if they win the cup, but watching McKinnon or Landy or Makar lifted, I won't be upset about it.
Yeah, there's just too much good hockey to be played for me to root against them actively. If the Wings are good again, I might find a way to arbitrarily revive that in my head, but for now. Chris B says, hey guys, new Patreon supporter. Welcome, Chris, and thank you for supporting the show. He says, from Wisconsin, I've actually been listening to the show for 4 years. Started listening right around when Mika was born. Oh, wow. You've been with us for a while. Your podcast helped me stay sane during countless hours of studying and research during college. Now I'm in medical school, so I'm going to need you guys even more moving forward. Well, congratulations on getting in, man. And you have a lot of hard work ahead of you, so we'll do our best to keep
Ryan's mother would be proud.
Don't tell my mother. Do not tell my mother. Oh, man. They still think it's just a phase. Anyhow, no, seriously, that's amazing, man. And happy to be along with you for the ride. Now for my question, do you think that all of the Cole Perfetti to the Wings talk is just based off Sam Costantino speculating about the Saginaw connection on the night of the lottery? For the record, I really like the player, and he might be my number one choice at 4th overall, but I find it hard to believe that the Wings are set on the pick and would let it leak that they are taking him. That's a great analysis, and I think we and a lot of media are guilty of kind of zeroing in on these things, because since Yzerman has taken the Red Wings general managership, he has been an iron wall. There has been absolutely nothing leaking out of that organization. Most, if not all, of the connections that we had disappeared overnight. And he notoriously plays things close to the chest. So you're right. We could just be focusing in on something that isn't really there. It's a great point.
So without any actual knowledge of the situation, here's my guess as to what happened. Obviously, a guy like Sam probably has a million connections around the NHL, and he probably has connections to Red Wings scouts and so on and so forth. So he could have been talking to Draper or an Ontario regional scout, and the scout could have just said something along the lines of, "Oh yeah, no, we really like him. Like, we really, really like him." Doesn't mean he's the best favorite pick at 4, but if you hear a scout say that, then it's very much a possibility. So you could hear something like that and go, "Oh yeah. No, they really like him, so I'll bet they take him." It could just be something like that. But then things change. Maybe Stutzle falls. I don't know. There's a million things that could change that. But I don't think it comes from nowhere. But I don't read everything into it either.
Jake Nagy says, curious to see what your thoughts are related to Lafreniere and Rossi opting to wait to play in the NHL versus Raymond and Holtz opting to play in the Swedish league. What kind of bearing could this have on the draft, particularly at the number 4 spot? The way I read this is Raymond and Holtz are guys who know that they are supremely talented, should or could be going in the top 5, and want to work to improve their draft stock and get a little bit more exposure. Lafreniere and Rossi are guys who know that they are ready to play in the NHL next year, at least in their minds, don't want to risk the injury, know they'll be drafted really high, and so, or at least reasonably believe it, and so don't want to, go out and get hurt, instead want to focus and train for training camp and try to make the team the year after. So I completely understand it from both sides.
Yeah, I mean, Lafreniere, it's a no-brainer. He's playing before the draft does him nothing. It's not going to hurt. It's not going to help his draft stock. Well, it could hurt if he gets hurt. But even then, he'd still get picked first overall. But if he gets hurt, then he can't play for the Rangers. So, makes sense for him. Rossi, I'm a little more surprised because I don't think he's a lock to make the NHL this year. But at the same time, if he wants to play in North America at the NHL or even the AHL level, then it makes sense.
RC Tendy says, let's put our tinfoil hats on for a second. The SHL season starts before the draft. The DEL season starts after. Raymond absolutely tears it up and gets taken 3rd by Ottawa. Wings get Stutzle, and the bromance between him and Sider grows in Detroit, and all is good. Or Ottawa will still take Stutzle, and we take Raymond, who absolutely torched the arguably 3rd best league in the world. It's a win-win. Or LA takes Stutzle, and that all goes to shit.
Yeah, but hey, Ottawa's been linked to Raymond, just like Detroit's been linked to Perfetti. So if you believe that kind of thing, if Stutzle goes too, you never know. I'm not betting on it.
Michael Barry says, hey guys, fun question. If the Wings drafted Zegras or Cousins last year, which were consensus picks at that point, would you want to draft Drysdale this year? I know next year's defense heavy, but Ratu and Gunther are pretty good. Have a good one. Also, if the Jets want to trade Laine for Larkin, would you say yes? Pure hypothetical. Larkin has 3 years left at 6.1. Laine has 1 more year at 6.7.
No, I would prefer to keep Larkin at this point. And if we didn't take Sider last year, I would still prefer to take a forward here, just because I think they are better players than Drysdale. I flip-flop Drysdale anywhere from 6 to 8 on my personal list. So if he's in that range for me, I'm not taking him at 4, no matter what the positional need is.
Like the Hobbits say, why not second forward?
Yeah, for real. Have they not heard about second forward?
Yeah.
All I see is Gaines says, so Ryan, your Matthias Brome pronunciation is better than your Pavel Datsyuk voice. What's up with that? I think it's because I grew up in an Arab family, and so all of my accents just slowly morph into Arab no matter what accent I'm trying to do. Real question, is Rossi too close to his ceiling to be considered by the Wings? Let's go Red Wings, or even better, come again, Red Wings, come again. Yeah, that's a real possibility that Rossi could be closer to his ceiling. The same way we had that criticism of Brady Tkachuk, I think similarly it could be applied to Rossi here.
I mean, he is closer to his ceiling because he's a year older. But he also did win the OHL scoring title over the likes of Quinton Byfield, Cole Perfetti, etc. So if we're talking about who's the better player of all of them today, well, I would argue Rossi's the second best player in this draft right now. But you don't draft guys based on right now. So Yeah, I think Rossi's closer to a ceiling. I still think he's got room to grow. It's just the guys below him have more room to grow, which is why you start flip-flopping him. But I don't think that should prohibit Detroit from taking him at 4. I mean, he's going to be a great player either way, so it factors into their decision, but I don't think it's the defining what's going to define that decision.
Alex Ott says, for the realistic picks the Wings could have, give me a reason they should draft them and 2 reasons they shouldn't. Let's say the players are. So we'll do these one at a time. Raymond. Reason they should draft.
So 1 good reason and 2 reasons they shouldn't?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Okay, so
quick.
Raymond?
Yeah.
Elite at many things, weak at none.
Yeah, reasons they shouldn't.
Tiny.
Winger.
He's
Winger,
smallish.
Drysdale.
Unbelievable skater and hockey mind.
And positional need, right-handed defenseman might be the only one that they don't need right now, and not a Makar level defenseman.
Not sold on his offensive upside being as elite as people make it out to be.
Rossi could be an elite 2-way center. Reasons to not, could have to flip to wing and small.
Yes.
Stutzle.
Unbelievable hand skating vision. Poor defensively and needs to get stronger. Might not translate.
Perfetti.
Elite hockey IQ for the reason 2. Not a great skater. Plays slow.
Joseph Fournier says, hey there, fellas. Justin Bourne is hot on Krug coming to Detroit, but the crew at Hockey Central thinks he stays in Boston. I thought so too until I saw his recent tweet thanking Boston. He's gone. If he comes to Detroit, then maybe they might contend in 5 to 7 years. If he wants to win now, who doesn't? What current contender in their window has a cap space to sign him and makes sense for both? I haven't even looked.
Yeah, I haven't been looking outside the market. 1, I'm so happy Torrey Krug came out and said he's not taking a short-term deal, so it will shut up the segment of the Detroit Red Wings fan base that say, yeah, but what if he takes a 2? No, he's not taking a 2-year deal. It was a stupid idea from the start, and now that he said it's a stupid idea, can we please stop it makes sense if he comes to Detroit on a short-term deal. No, it doesn't, and you're not signing a guy who's 30 years old to a long-term deal when you're rebuilding. You know what team would have made a ton of sense for him before they ate up more cap space? Montreal. But hey, whatever.
Hear me out. Nashville. They've got Granlund and Craig Smith coming off the books, and that's $10 million.
But
and then they move Turris to Detroit. Boom, there's $16 million short up a year.
Anaheim makes sense to me.
Yeah, who doesn't want to live over on the West Coast?
Sign Torrey Krug, send Turris and one of your current defensive core to Detroit. Bam.
Who doesn't want to live in Detroit? Come on.
Any thoughts on Tyler Bozak possibly being a cap dump to Detroit? Also, the Islanders have been more fun to watch than the Flyers.
St. Louis still needs Tyler Bozak, and St. Louis has worse cap dumps that they could do.
He also has a modified no trade.
Stay Fresh Cheese Bags, the official cheese bag of Mark Bergevin. Want to blow almost 20% of your cap space in net? Store it in a Stay Fresh cheese bag till you make a nonsense trade for a goalie you could have easily found a cheaper equivalent of in free agency. And with that, we are going to wrap up this episode because Evan is in desperate need of a Kleenex. Thank you to all of you who have tuned in and listened. Our Patreon supporters, our name level sponsors, the septic tank of that bitch Carol Baskins, Greach, Jeremiah Dobo, Jake Kiefer, 2020 sucks sweaty balls, and his comment was actually just the word redacted. Andrew Bohan, Scott Martin, Jacob Turner, Matt McKay, Craig Kibble, Brandon M, Matthew M. Rice, Luke Johnson, Kalen Wood, Hassam Al-Qassem, Arjun Shankar, Charlie Elkins, Han Ali, Trevor Pevavar, Alex Ott, Ashley Van Konik, Chris Frank, Connor Leighton, Matthew Keeler, Simon Anderson, Antonio Gracias, John Evans, Quaz, and Stan Olson. Thank you all. Happy belated birthday to Joseph Fournier. Take care, and we will see you on Sunday.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to check out wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find links to other ways to support the show, such as Patreon, official podcast apparel, and more. And don't forget to follow the show on Twitter at Winged Wheel Pod. And of course, the hosts at Brad Crisco, at Ryan Hanna WWP, and at Hockey Town Evan.